Thank you for inviting me. I'm going to read a few poems. I'm going to read a qasida and a ghazal. I think I'm going to begin with the ghazal because we just finished our workshop. And I'm going to read a new ghazal. And now that you know how to be an audience in the ghazal, I expect some help. The refrain or the radif in this ghazal is broken, and I'm going to read it in the traditional style. So I will repeat the first line of every couplet, and every couplet ends with the word broken. Fix your gaze on the swinging chandelier. Everything else is broken. Fix your gaze on the swinging chandelier. Everything else is broken. A subtle perfume bursts from the debris as my silence propels broken. This was war, and all I had for armor was an heirloom quilt of verses. This was war, and all I had for armor was an heirloom quilt of verses. As it hacked my jugular, your huntsman's axe cried, "This gazelle's broken." Look for my tapestries unraveling under the bed, the unspooled story. Look for my tapestries unraveling under the bed, the unspooled story. Sweet, covered with ants, our unlived life yet, in a nutshell, is broken. Ghalib strung verses for the sly beloved, crumbling estate, leaking roof. Ghalib strung verses for the sly beloved, crumbling estate, leaking roof. Keats sang to the elusive autumn of his life. A poet so baffles the broken. Economy, a dull house. Let's burn those tangerine candles at both ends. Economy, a dull house. Let's burn those tangerine candles at both ends. Let's be inflamed moths. You know, everything this market sells is broken. The angel by the nightstand tosses a pill, a dose of light in my final hour. The angel by the nightstand tosses a pill, a dose of light in my final hour. I shimmer for my union with the beloved when this shabby shell's broken. We must sip slowly, pause for each delicate hinge and hiccup of our song. We must sip slowly, pause for each delicate hinge and hiccup of our song. Isn't breaking up a most fragile affair? Aren't these last farewells broken? And this last one, self-addressed signature couplet. Yours was the spirit trapped in the magic lamp. Yours the fate rubbed. Yours was the spirit trapped in the magic lamp. Yours the fate rubbed. Zeest, how ordinary is this flash called life when at last the spell's broken. Thank you. And I'll read a couple more ghazals, but I'm going to now read a qasida. And I will, let me get a vote. You were here yesterday, or you were at the reading yesterday. Should I read the 700,000 Years of Love or the New York? I think we have time for only one, because they're long poems.
Well, 700,000 years of love.
Okay. Okay. So this is a qasida that is, as we know, that a qasida is a journey poem, 50 lines for this one. And it's an imaginary journey. This one is an imaginary journey, and it begins after I die. And what is the story behind this? I will read, there's a little footnote, I'll read that to you. So we all know the story of how Adam was created and how Satan said, no, I'm not going to bow before Adam. We all know that story, right? So in the Islamic tradition, Iblis was a jinn, the fallen angel in the biblical tradition. In Islam, he was a jinn. He was not an angel, he was a jinn. He was made of fire. And he was a devout servant of God. And he is said to have loved God for 700,000 years. So the qasida, the praise in this poem, is a praise to love. And what happens in the poem, I'll give it away, is that I was an accident and I died, and I encountered Iblis. So let me just read the footnote. The Sufis don't think of this whole story as a story of disobedience. They look at it differently. They don't say that, okay, so he's the evil one. Satan means the evil one in the Western, in the biblical tradition, as well as in Shaitan in Arabic means the evil one. The Sufis think that it wasn't disobedience. It was just that he loved God so much that he couldn't imagine bowing before another being. So it was out of love that he said no. So notes, in the Islamic tradition, Iblis was a devout jinn, a creature made of smokeless fire, who worshipped God for 700,000 years before Adam was created. He disobeyed God by refusing to bow before Adam, and from then onwards became Shaitan, or Satan, the evil one. Some Sufis view this refusal as an act of extreme devotion to the beloved rather than the disobedience. And there are 5 names of the 5 prayers: Isha, Fajr, Zohar, Asr, and Maghrib, different times of the day, and you'll get it from the context. Qasida of 700,000 years of love. So death's muscle was pulp. A breeze past a dandelion, its hold frost, a weak clam gripping me when the Honda fell into a crater off the interstate. True, the last breath was a thin veil caught in thorns, but it was swift, and I entered Iblis's study. No river of pus, lava, or honey. No plank to walk, but the punishment of another journey. 700,000 years of service. How Iblis loved God before the cosmos, before our polished clay, our high brow, our delicious sin. It must have been Isha time on earth. His room in the swirling infinity was a closed tulip, a peeling thing with heavy petals, windows open with desire for the one who teaches love even to moss, scale, concrete. I hung from the windows, dangling in eternity, a prowler, playing the role of an extra, where Iblis absorbed all energies in prayer. A magnet for the nocturnal garden, swarmed with delicate scents. I hung like a thief for his purity, and crept like an ape, a vine, onto his roof. My town must by this time be encircled by the amber rim of dawn, Fajr, plush, tranquil, unrolling the day. Iblis, through the cracks, was a glowing ton of fire, immeasurably at peace, knotted in prayer as a fruit blossom, a perfumed navel, a fetus, impenetrable. I hovered like a bomber's shadow, sun a lemon in the sky, and earth a wheat grain. How could I not recall the fragrance of bread, the gusts of winds that came with trains, the arrivals. Zohar, my most hungry time. His posture and prayer made me long to wipe the tears of red-cheeked geishas, orphans of war, those tied up, spat upon. 700,000 years of loving God. I could not make it from Zohar to Asr without pangs. Every bird song sewed me in to the coarse cloth of the Sufi's resolve. With Maghrib came the sound of the key turning in the lock, the lust of repose. I clung to his study like a spider web, watching Iblis, the steady servant, with his quietude. Windows burnished with divine light, garlanded with lint, I looked below. So, you have the 50 lines. Okay, so I'm going to read a couple more poems, and this time I'm just going to do just a straight reading, won't repeat. Ghazal, sign language. Cast off the gloves, your hand is bejeweled with language. Words fling into shape on your palm, angled with language. At the tyrant's shut window, you built a case for your voice. You were jailed in an exquisite silence, chiseled with language. Those leonine eyes have met nameless fears. Their fires are raw. They speak in cinders to the huntsman, bundled in language. Nostalgic for a win, you let the Pacific wash over the boat game. Did you forget how oceans bring back time, bottled in language? Phone cameras catch men in uniform, pillaging, pissing on corpses. Zeest, the paper lies again, shows how truth is burgled with language. And this is my newest ghazal. And the redif, or the refrain, is change. We muzzle our beasts, those wild dreams that ooze change. Browbeaten, sink into the couch, never to see the news change. My clock is chained to your absence like a stolen pendant. But old time funnels its song into new time to fuse change. You sliced my theories, savored my mind like a summer fruit. Summer, you say, but spring was no less barbaric. Why accuse change? Ghosts, those bright contagions of fireflies, arrive as convicts. They go on emptying their pockets of ideas like loose change. Zeest, it takes delicious dark solitude for coal to turn into diamond. Behind thin walls, you hear them say, why did that recluse change? And some poems from Baker of Tarifa. As you know, this book, some of you know, this book is based on the history of Al-Andalus, also known as Muslim Spain. So this is nearly 800 years of more or less peaceful coexistence between the Abrahamic people. So there were periods of conflict, and there were wars, and so on, but for the most part, it was a civilization that was built with a certain sense of trust between the three Abrahamic faiths. Excuse me. So much so that there was a synagogue in Toledo that had lines of the Quran on the walls. And people could pray in each other's worship places. Muslims could pray in churches and synagogues and vice versa. This book is about convivencia, Spanish for peaceful coexistence, but it's also about the intellectual accomplishments of this civilization. And I think the two things are sort of related. When there is tolerance and acceptance of divergent ideas and philosophies, There is also a sort of a shared interest in creating something intellectual, because you give up, you're not focused on the differences, you're focused on the similarities. So that frees up a lot of time and space and energy for actual work. So this civilization is known for beautiful architecture, for advances in math and philosophy, theology, and of course literature and calligraphy, cartography, all kinds of technology, navigation techniques, all kinds of stuff. So I did some research, I went to Spain a couple of times, and I wrote a series of poems that are in the voices of these people. So I wanted to recreate history. So part of this book is sort of, you can call it historical fiction, because some of these figures are invented, they're sort of fictional figures. But there are also poems in the voices of actual historical figures from this period. And the primary metaphor, and I was researching this, there's so much wonderful, fascinating stuff to learn from how developed this civilization was. It really was the bridge between antiquity and modernity. Because ideas like secularism, ruling, not ruling by using scripture, but by secularism came from the 13th century Andalusi, and then so on and so forth, lots of different things. So I thought, if I had to choose one metaphor for this whole civilization, what would it be? It was very hard to figure it out. And then I came across Andalusi recipes, and I thought, the recipes are traditional Jewish, Christian, and Muslim recipes. And thought, and the other thing was that in this period they would have this communal oven called the fern, and people would, in the neighborhood, would line up. They would make their dough at home, and they would line up and make their bread in the same ovens. So I thought that's a ready-made metaphor for me. Yeah. It is symbolic of collaboration, and bread, in almost every culture, bread is sort of a symbol of sharing. It's a symbol of livelihood. It's a symbol of nourishment. So it goes for intellectual nourishment as well, which is what. So this book is about bread and books. I'm going to read one poem from this book, but then I'm going to ask you to join me in a performance piece. So, like what we did yesterday. So this poem is called Window Overlooking the Fern. It's in the voice of a window that overlooks the communal oven. The dough lies dreaming, pregnant and smooth in an earthen basin. It is summer, and the soap-white curtains are exhaling like sails. There is faraway laughter and a pulse nearby. In oil, semolina, she catches the pulse, the imprint of fate lines. It is the summer of barley, white flour, spiced honey, lavender, sourdough. From the houses of Jewish leather merchants, Christian boatmen singers, Muslim botanists, held by a mother with coal-lined eyes, bread for apricot-skinned children. And so on the theme of bread, there are lots of different themes in this book. It's a lot of this is also about the Inquisition, or the collapse of the civilization. So how the Inquisition happened, and the details of that. There's obviously more history available about the Inquisition than everything else, because two reasons. One is that the Inquisition was relatively more recent, only 500 years ago. And the other reason is, there are details of names of people and the acreage of the land that was taken, and who was exiled where, and so on and so forth. You have those details. But the details about the civilization were erased. That was part of the Inquisition, was to erase, the complete erasure of Al-Andalus. And so how do we still know some things? We know them because when people were exiled, they took their recipes with them, they took their music with them, they took their poetry with them, But the books were burned, of course, and that was a major part of the Inquisition, was to erase the culture of books. The maps were burned, books were burned. People were disallowed to use Arabic in Spain and to wear the clothes, the Arab clothes, and so on and so forth. So it's harder to research the rest of it, but now in the past, I'd say 15, 20 years, people are really doing a lot of research. This is recent. A lot of research, and you have really good books about this period. So this next one is a performance poem, and I need two people to read this with me like yesterday. Would you, the two of you, do it? Because you were there yesterday, so you know how it works. So what's behind this poem is that it's called the Confectioner's District in Sevilla, and it's the baker's chant. And I was imagining these bakers waking up. This is by the river. This confectioner's district is by the river. And waking up in the morning, and you know bakers wake up before everybody else because they have to feed everyone. And they wake up sort of in the middle of the night, and they prepare their dough and so on and so forth. And when it's dawn, the hot bread is ready. So I was imagining bread and bakers and this chant that these bakers are making. If you do it like yesterday, it might be easier if you're in the middle, and then I'll be column 1, you're column 2, you're column 3, and you're reading horizontal.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's spaces where I don't have anything. So it's just simple like, horizontal text. The river, sweets in its spine.
Sweets in its spine.
Gold in mouth.
The river,
Shivering before dawn.
Honeycomb.
Simmering alchemy.
Gold's honey boiling.
Shivering
Shivering before dawn.
before dawn, the confectioners awaken.
to different gods.
Same sugar.
The confectioners awaken.
From orange blossom,
Dreams.
blossom, figs, pomegranates,
Cream
promises.
of milk and honey.
Honey become word.
The river stirs.
Word become vapor.
Rises.
The ovens heat up.
The dough rises.
The dough rises.
The dough rises.
The dough rises.
The sun rises.
Honey river boils over.
Hell and heaven.
Heaven and hell.
The sun rises.
On the patisseries.
The bakeries.
Sugar dust rises.
In place of worship.
Different places.
Same God. Different places.
Same God.
Sugar dust settles.
All scores.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So the point of making a collaborative poem was just to sort of, this is symbolic of the civilization that was collaborative. So I'm going to read maybe a couple of poems from Colin Schaff. This one is for my grandmother, who was a big influence on me, and she sort of exposed me to Urdu literature as well as English literature when I was young. She was a college professor, and she was constantly reciting something either from her mother tongue, which was Punjabi. From Punjabi, so she could, she was reciting folk poems and stories, or stories from the Quran, or stories from Shakespeare's plays, and poetry by Milton and Keats. Milton and Keats were her favorites. So this poem is called It's Your Marmalade House. It's about her house. It's your marmalade house where the goats are the sentries. Tonight's turnip stew is burning while you read a Masnavi lying on a rope cot. I'm on a rickety stool threatening to break prayer beads. I break your fountain pen, wipe off the ink on your curtains, and with the celerity of a jinn, climb the roof, causing dusty pigeons to flutter. From here, I see kites teasing fallen feathers. I see our sentries dozing. Look how my suddenness has stripped time itself, for the house was sold 20 years ago when you died. Okay, so this one's called bilingual. In the butcher's window, there were tongues, marinating in oils and auspicious herbs. I said, that one, with the rainbow. And if I may have two, give me that other, that many-textured one. Crisp and tight and sublime, supple like tapioca, fine-edged like a prince's dagger, and reversible like a damask sash, and grooved like the pit of a peach please. He filled my greedy mouth with two half-tongues. So it's always like that with, when you have more of one, when it's not singular but plural, you always wonder if it was a division or if you got something or lost something. Monsoon. And we spoke yesterday about how I grew up during the time of the Soviet war in Afghanistan. So I grew up in Pakistan, but my hometown was the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And so I wasn't affected by the war personally, except all my childhood memories contain refugees and the effects of war, the ravages of war were sort of, familiar for that reason. Why the pale mosquito net over the charpai I slept on all summer still falls liquid in my memory like sugarcane juice, or why the polonaise is like running along the small green humps of a single hill in Europe where no one dies of summer, I don't know. But when the sky growls and lightning crackles its long plastic fingers, the dusty Jamun is less ghost, more tree. The city baked hollow in the sun's furnace sprouts double-shaded roses. When the rains come, I bring Socrates from the glass shelves, cut a mango in cubes to go with some milk. There is no need for Chopin, because the young Afghan from the refugee camp, who made himself a wheelchair after the war, plays his flute all day long to the rain's vigorous beat. So one of the things that I noticed was these refugees were very self-reliant, many of them. They would do something like make their own wheelchair. And I was very impressed by that. As a young child, I remember, first of all, I'd never seen people who were handicapped, and I was telling Richard yesterday how I heard about, I was 7 or 8 years old when the war started, and I heard about these bombs that are put in toys, the landmines, and also these bombs that were deliberately put in toys, and the kids would be attracted to them and run to them, and they would lose their legs and so on. So the experience of a child seeing other children handicapped like that and suffering, it was really something that was a first-hand experience that I didn't have enough information to really know what was going on or to understand what this was, but I saw it. But this part of refugees making their own wheelchairs and so on was something that I remember being very impressed by. Just going to read two more. Let's see. This book has some poems about my growing up during the time of that war, but it also has poems. This is an autobiographical book, so sort of these are my responses. I wrote the two books simultaneously at the same time, and I was doing research for that book, but these poems are a response to what I was going through, and as someone who's raising, a Muslim American raising kids in the post 9/11 world. So this poem I'm about to read is called U.S. Airstrikes, and it was written in 2004 for Iraq. In the 4 minutes it took me to mince the cloves, dump the tea leaves in the rose bush, and soak the carafe, a whole city was lost. There were feet still in school shoes, limp flesh singing into satchels, clinging to a post, a shattered clock. The children, if not orphaned, were purpled beyond recognition. Orders had been carried down, one signal igniting another, and a man had let a deafening rhapsody guide his young hand to drop a 500-pound bomb on a mosque. Just when I finished rinsing the carafe, a whole city was under cement dust and smoke, and I thought I heard screaming behind walls of fire in the kettle's sharp whistle, just when I added the cloves, the last green line. And I'm going to end the reading with this poem called Notes for My Husband. I showed Yusuf to the amethyst morning when he was born. Kettle drums play 4 at a time, each tuned to play its own note. Each he would swallow whole with my vertical voice in Urdu, and watch with his cardamom eyes the slow flare of Van Gogh's sunflowers, the silk ascent to Victoria's Peak, the concave shine of mango achar. He is slender like pine nuts and keen on butter. Yasin prefers honey and tells me the sun on the front door smells like library soap. I feel the light lathering the knob as I open it. The house is filled with jazz and bagpipes. Iqbal's poems on marble construction paper. We weep in both languages, and anything round is a planet. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Class is dismissed. I'm going to hang around because we're going to do an interview video that we're going to post on Facebook, related to the Nazi Hikmet Festival. Hope to see you all next month, and don't forget to enter the Nazi Hikmet Festival and put it on your calendars for April 10th. So thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.